All right. I'd like to thank everybody for taking some time to hang out with us today. This is the final installment of the four-part Pardot Career Paths panel that I've been running here on the Tampa Pardot user group. We've done three previous. If you're curious what those were all about, they were all great. Feel free to visit the um, they're all uploaded and posted to the Pardot Geeks blog. So there's a lot of really good info there, and a lot of really great insights if you're interested in different kind of career paths that are available to you that also happen to involve the Pardot and Sales Cloud platforms. So in this final installment, we'll be focusing on nonprofits, and we've got a really great group of people who come from different areas of nonprofits, whether it's working for a nonprofit or providing consultative services to nonprofits. Um, and this will be an hour. If you have questions in addition to, or maybe if we don't get to them, feel free to email me, and I will try to connect you to the right person to get your question answered. Or if you'd like to reach out to them on LinkedIn or wherever, you can also do that as well. So what I'd like to do is kind of start off with intros. You see we've got a pretty full house here of people. So I'm just going to ask them to kind of, if you guys could just kind of intro yourself a bit and kind of who you are, your background, who you work with, and whatever else you're willing to share. So let's just kind of start at the top with Mara.
Hi, everyone. I am Mara Stadniski, and I work at Be The Match as a marketing automation strategist. And I've been doing Pardot for about 5 years now. I actually started in graphic design, and like many across the Pardot world, kind of got Pardot dropped in their lap, and that's how my career started. Something else about me, I guess I love softball, and right after this call, I'm heading out to go play softball in a women's league.
Excellent. Jacqueline.
That sounds really cool, Mara. I did not know that about you. So exciting. Best of luck at that game. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Fassett. I am a marketing automation solution consultant at Traction On Demand. I am a Pardot consultant. I also have certifications for Education Cloud and Nonprofit Cloud. My passion is the Salesforce.org space, so helping organizations of all kinds and sizes with their marketing automation. I started, like Mara, about 5 years ago in Pardot, but before that, I was heavily involved in multiple different organizations. I have sat on several boards and chaired many committees that are either marketing focused or other things like programs and volunteer focused. So the nonprofit space is what I do outside of my work time. So like Mara's fun fact, mine is that I am currently involved with the Junior League of Portland, where I help volunteer events for 500 women, and we hold monthly volunteer efforts. So super excited to talk a little bit more about that and how that could relate back to Pardot.
Awesome. Thank you. There's Kirsten. I want to say that's Kirsten. I'll somebody who one of our people looks like they joined, but I will come back to Kirsten. Next up, we have Mizuki.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mizuki Arai, and I'm the marketing operations specialist at a nonprofit called idealist.org. We are a tech nonprofit organization with a mission to connect good intentions with action. One of the ways that we do that is we have a nonprofit and social impact job board. So I'm relatively new to the role. I would say relatively new to Pardot as well. Probably about a year since I've started using it. And yeah, Pardot itself is, something that our organization is really just trying to take advantage of and learn about and keep growing in. So yeah, excited to be in this role, excited to be here to talk a little bit about that.
Awesome. And Michelle, I realize I misspelled your last name as soon as I looked at it here. I apologize for that. But yeah, Michelle, if you could go next.
Yeah, no worries. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Michelle Chang, and I'm the membership program and data manager at Spur. I run the membership program side of Spur, which is a nonprofit public policy organization in the San Francisco Bay Area. I would also say that I don't have a marketing background, and I've been working with Pardot for about 2 years. And so we use Pardot extensively for our marketing for this nonprofit.
Awesome, thank you. And next we have Sheridan.
Hi, I'm Sheridan Marfil. I'm the Director of Digital Fundraising for the World Food Program USA. Prior to the World Food Program, I've worked for a variety of nonprofits, as well as the federal government doing email marketing or digital marketing. So I've been in Pardot for the past 2 years, actually working closely with Kirsten on getting us up and running with NPSP for Salesforce, as well as Pardot. So I'm happy to be here. And like Mara, I'm not going to softball, but I do rock climb, and that's what I will be doing after this session.
Awesome, thank you very much. That's cool. I like that we all kind of inserted little fun facts. So I guess just a little bit about me is that I'm lead the Tampa Pardot user group here, and I am a Pardot solutions architect with a firm called BDO Digital. And I guess a little fun fact about me is that my wife and I are big fans of Florida native gardening, and so we're it's raining really hard right now, so we're not going to do that afterwards. But we're, in addition to doing marketing automation and all that, I'm a big fan of native plants and native gardening here in West Central Florida. And we were able to get Kirsten on board. That was sometimes this platform is more challenging than it should be, but I appreciate you sticking with it. So I will, right now we're just doing introductions. So Kirsten, if you wouldn't mind, a little intro about yourself, and apparently now we're doing fun facts as well. So also a little fun fact about you.
All right, my name is Kirsten Kippen. I just had to use my my maiden name to fake out all the single sign-on stuff happening with me having too many Salesforce accounts for getting on here. So so that's my story. I work with Idealist Consulting. I am a Pardot consultant, and I made the shift into the consulting world after being an in-house marketer for most of my career in both nonprofits and B2B. And I shifted over to consulting when my second daughter was born to have some more flexibility, and I work with nonprofits primarily now.
Excellent, and, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Fun fact, gosh, I don't know. I wear a lot of preschooler jewelry that looks like artisan Portland stuff, because it's kind of the same thing. So
yeah, that's funny. That's funny. The people are like talking about going rock climbing, and Mara's going to play softball after this, and so we all just dropped some fun knowledge. And you're a preschool jewelry is your thing, it seems. Awesome. Well, thank you for all of that. And I want to, just for those that have joined since I just mentioned initially, if you do have questions, please use in the upper right-hand corner. There's a little chat icon. There's a general tab, and there's Q&A. Feel free to drop a question in the Q&A. It may be answered by one of the panelists directly in there, or I'll put it to someone live. So what I would like to do is kind of kick it off. I do have some pre-prepared questions that I put together just to kind of get the conversation flowing. So the first question I have is for Mara, and it's relating to your time before you were with Be the Match. You were a Pardot admin that was more on the B2B, B2C side. And I was just curious to get a sense and kind of learn from you what was it about transitioning into nonprofit that kind of piqued your interest, and in what ways is your role different in this nonprofit kind of aligned role or aligned organization versus what you were doing in that previous role?
Well, Be the Match, we save lives every day, so doesn't get much better than that.
that is a good lead.
Well, what really brought me was the role. I was really looking forward to diving specifically into Pardot, because my previous roles was kind of more unicorn and doing some graphic design, like I mentioned before, and a little bit of Marketing Cloud too. I did, but this role was specifically Pardot, and it was a new instance of Pardot that they got, and they just hadn't really done anything in it yet. So I was really looking forward to helping them get it off the ground. And I would say my team, though, isn't really different than my previous positions. I would say it's more of a traditional B2B company inside the nonprofit. We do lead generation, prospect scoring and grading, qualified lead processes with the sales team, just like you would at a B2B company. And then we also have another part of our team that is more considered B2C, and they actually use Marketing Cloud. So we use both in Be the Match.
Interesting. So that's something that, I mean, that's come up in a couple different panels, people asking about, well, what about Marketing Cloud? And do you ever come across Marketing Cloud? And that's something that I come across as a consultant, and I'm sure that Kirsten and Jacqueline have as well. So with how you guys use it, I'm guessing that, I mean, you kind of mentioned that there's this B2C side that is more Marketing Cloud centric. So how is there a relationship between the two platforms where, like, and like some of the use cases I've heard is like there's a very specific audience for Pardot that's nurture driven, and once they achieve whatever the desired outcome is, they then get pushed into this broader marketing. Is there a relationship between the two platforms?
Currently, no, they're pretty separate. Our sales force is more blended, I would say. We're starting to, it's hard to explain, but we have the B2C customers, and we have our B2B customers, and sometimes they overlap. So the data we need to see is more on the CRM side, the Salesforce side, than actually like the marketing side. But we are working on creating some kind of overall view of our constituents. We don't want people emailing them on the Marketing Cloud side while we're emailing them on the Pardot side and overloading them. So that is one of the areas that we are looking into strongly this fiscal year, is trying to get an overall view of what's going on between the platforms. But I don't think we have any plans to push anybody from our Pardot marketing to our Marketing Cloud marketing journeys.
So there's scenarios where record A in Sales Cloud, for example, there's uses where they're going to receive marketing from Marketing Cloud, but also scenarios where they would also receive marketing from Pardot. Okay, interesting. All right, so that kind of makes me think about something else that's people will sometimes underappreciate, is the levels of complexity that can exist within nonprofits, especially larger ones. And this can be whether it's I mean, I'm sure Sheridan can speak to this, and I'm particularly intrigued to hear from either. Let's start with Jacqueline, and then kind of and then maybe Kirsten and Sheridan could chime in as well. So the question is, what are some of the things that, what are some of these complex projects that whether it's aligning data sources, third-party data sources, or trying to push data across to other platforms? What are some of the scenarios where you've encountered that are complex requirements that require someone like a Jacqueline or a Kirsten to be able to kind of make sense of? And so, Jacqueline, if you want to kind of take it, and then I'd love to hear Kirsten's take on that as well.
Sure. So just to make sure I understand. So the question is, what are some of the scenarios when you would need to pull in a consultant to help you with Pardot or Marketing Cloud, especially a complex project?
Yeah. So yeah, like what are some of those scenarios where you've got a cross cloud more complex use cases, because I think sometimes people can see nonprofits as being I don't know, maybe smaller organizationally or not having as complex requirements. And I've seen it firsthand that that's not the case, but I would be very interested to hear both what Jacqueline and Kirsten as well have to say.
Yeah, so, I think nonprofits have their hands and a lot of different tools. And I think, especially when we look at fundraising, there are a lot of different tools that someone may use from fundraising. You may have a platform over here that helps you with peer-to-peer and a platform over here that helps you, do direct fundraising off of something like Facebook or a social media platform. And getting all of that data connected back to your systems, or even just being able to pull a CSV file so that you can import it yourself, can be tricky. That could be someone's full-time job if you're large enough and have enough of those donations coming in. And then we start to think about, well, how do we thank those donors and how do we nurture them to give again? And so it becomes larger and larger. So I think there is a misconception that a lot of nonprofits, especially the smaller ones, somehow aren't going to have all this data like a large B2B organization would, but that's just not true. So we really want to get an idea of all of the different platforms someone may be using and think about all of the different ways that the data is going to come into a system. Sometimes that works well with Pardot through the API or just pulling something directly into Salesforce. But sometimes it leads to a larger conversation around Marketing Cloud, which can hold more data and segment more data. And so I think when someone starts to get into the nitty-gritty and feeling like they've just got too much data in front of them, that's a good point to call in a consultant.
Okay, that makes total sense. Kirsten, if you have, I don't know if you have anything that you want to kind of add to that.
Yeah, I think the thing. Well, first of all, I just want to really reiterate what Jacqueline and some others were saying, that I think nonprofits kind of, on the contrary, are actually more complex than your typical B2B. Most of the time, they're kind of a blend of B2B and B2C, and also, a lot of other things, right? There's a lot of like personality, culture, mission first pieces that kind of influence how you approach a project. And so I think, really thinking about that and what matters to the people, and what they can do with their time if they're not spending all of their time uploading CSVs. I think that really unlocks a lot of interesting possibilities on the platforms. And I just think too, in addition to Jacqueline talking about all the different data sources, I think a lot of nonprofits have people who are, constituents who are wearing a lot of different hats and have to be nurtured in different ways. So you have maybe a program management process from one part of the company, and you have a membership process from another piece. You have a volunteer management piece. You have a fundraising piece, of course, which every nonprofit has. And so, if you're thinking about nurturing in Pardot, you can't do a batch and blast sort of approach where you're just saying like this list of people is going to get this Giving Tuesday email. You really have to kind of think about the nuances to how those people matter to your organization, because if you piss them off, they're not going to donate anymore.
Yeah, there's a very especially when it comes to trying to solicit donations, there is a line to there is kind of a line to toe where you're, especially, I mean, with B2B, B2C, there's a little more like forgiveness, I think, maybe with errant emails and like maybe over emailing somebody. But if there's an implied relationship there with nonprofits where you are giving to support the mission, then if you were to do something that upsets them, then were very within their rights to kind of tighten the purse string and say, no, never mind, you guys no longer represent who I thought you were. And that's a very delicate line to kind of a very delicate line that you have to balance. And I think it speaks to it's evidence to the contrary that sometimes people who are in their kind of career planning, they think to themselves, well, nonprofits, they may think to themselves, well, that's not very exciting. There's not a lot that happens there. I feel like I'd get bored. I'm not saying that this is the case, but it's what you hear. People, when they're thinking about nonprofits, they will align in their mind with, oh, there's not as much excitement there as working with a B2B or B2C or whatever. And I think that what we're kind of talking about now is kind of kind of proving that fact. Sheridan, I want to kind of that was kind of a nice little segue into your background. You've been in the nonprofit marketing space, not just Pardot, but in other verticals for a number of years. So I would be interested to know how you see that kind of that thinking, whereas people will sometimes not be as excited about nonprofits as maybe they probably should be, just because they don't necessarily know. So for someone who's considering getting into the marketing, they're a marketing professional and they're intrigued by the idea of nonprofits, what are some things that you've seen over the years that have kind of demonstrated that working in a nonprofit is actually can be very exciting and very rewarding?
Sure. So I had an interesting start to my, I guess, nonprofit career. I was at a trade association, and my then boss approached me, and I had learned how to code when I was in high school, and they noticed that it was on my resume, and they were like, well, you must know how to email market. And I was also the youngest person at this trade association by far. So they were like, you also are on Facebook, so therefore you know how to use it for businesses. I was like, I have no idea, but I will give it a shot. And turned out, and I really thought that I was going to, and at that point I was doing like program management. And I really thought that that was going to be my path. And I, really, really enjoyed doing marketing and kind of getting my hands dirty with that. And so I think, email has always kind of been where I've been drawn to. I kind of like the direct, I guess, connection that you make with folks, particularly you talk about fundraising and you and that's what I do now, and you don't want to make people upset by asking too much or asking the wrong thing. And so I've always kind of enjoyed that part of email. And particularly, I think with the World Food Program USA, our email audience is very vocal with us when they do not like something or like something. And so at my current role, I actually oversee our monthly sustainer program, and we send communications to them. And they really do feel like advocates. And I think that that's, when you think about a nonprofit career, just putting yourself kind of in like the donor's shoes and what you want to hear about. And that's always been really, really helpful. Anything that I've found interesting, I feel like my audience and my donors also feel like it's interesting. And I think in terms of just, trying to get your feet wet, nonprofits, of course, don't have a lot of resources. And so I was kind of open to everything early on in my career. So I did a little bit of social media marketing. I did some website, some blogging. And then until I was able to kind of narrow it down into really finding my my niche with fundraising. So, yeah. Awesome.
That's cool, and that's it's interesting because when I was kind of looking through your background, I just noticed that you seemed also kind of found a bit of kind of a niche within nonprofit and nonprofit adjacent kind of organizations, and so I thought that was very interesting, and the because it's something that when I was talking with when we did the education career panel. The people kind of talked about it being a different state of a different approach, a different state of mind, and I think Mara kind of touched on this as well with the idea that you're saving lives in the case of Be the Match, but with what you're doing and with what Spur is doing and what Idealist.org is doing, there's like a bigger mission. There's a bigger. It's not selling software. It's not selling this. It's to be aligned in that space as a marketer within nonprofits. Your product is your mission, and I think that is a different way of thinking about it. And it's something that when they were talking about it, that really kind of resonated. I'm like, I want to make sure to bring that up on the nonprofit one, because I think that there's some shared that idea resonates would resonate with this audience as well, because it's just a different it's just a different way of thinking. You're obviously wanting to hit your numbers, but your numbers are in donations. Your numbers are in new memberships, things of that nature, and it's less about hitting your Q3 revenue number. Might be donations, so you can do this community impact event or something globally. So I thought that was very interesting when that was mentioned, and it definitely speaks to, I would think, if you're a marketer and you're wanting and you have a passion for email marketing, a passion for digital marketing, it does require a different mindset, different thinking about it in different ways, because there are people who are certainly, they excel in this kind of more kind of B2B, B2C environment where they're trying to sell a product or sell a service. But I think if you're going to come into a nonprofit or education kind of environment or vertical, the thinking has to be different. And it's not, you're still excited about what you're wanting to do, but the sales mentality, if you will, is just different. It's not the same. I would like to, I have a question for Mizuki around that. So your role recently changed formally changed into marketing operations specialist. And that's kind of indicative of changes that have been happening within other organizations, nonprofits, B2B, B2Cs, where the marketing ops role has kind of exploded in popularity. And it's now become, I mean, there's memes galore about how hot the marketing ops field is right now. And so I'm curious to know what that trickle down was at idealist.org, and what the conversations were internally once maybe they kind of stepped back and saw what you were doing and what marketing ops kind of means to an organization like idealist.org.
Yeah. So we're definitely I'm the first person at our organization to have a title in MOPS, as I like to call it, or as people like to call it. And yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because we're an organization of 35 people. We're quite small, so we don't really have dedicated teams for departments. We have just one person, and so, like you said, I just stepped into this role just about a month ago, officially, but I was kind of doing the role, for about a year, I would say. So it was really the pandemic when that hit. We went to work from home, and I was an office manager before this, and there was not much of an office to manage anymore. So I started kind of helping out with different teams, and I started helping with some of the email campaigning. And, obviously with the increasingly digital world in the past year, we were really trying to push our email program as an organization. And so those two things kind of coincided. And I found myself doing a lot of work in Pardot, increasingly so. And then to the point where this year, we are now going to be permanently flexible remote. So my role became official. So yeah, that's kind of how it happened, really organically. And we're still trying to figure out what marketing ops means for our organization. But I think specifically right now, we're really focused on email. We're really focused on automations. We're really focused on trying to figure out how to best use Pardot. And like everybody mentioned, all nonprofits are different, and we're a nonprofit, but we're a tech nonprofit, and we are self-funded for the most part. So, it's that sales mentality. Sure, we need people to post jobs, to be around as an organization, but the way we reach out to organizations and users is not necessarily to sell or do anything. We want to share resources. We want them to know about us. We want them to understand our mission. And so, yeah, there's always that unmeasurable goal, and we're always trying to figure out how do we measure success if we can't do it in dollars. And
that's really interesting. I'm really curious. I'm to hear and follow up in a few months to kind of hear how that's kind of come out in the end, because now you're kind of flirting with this idea of your end goal is dollars, or in partnerships for postings and things like that. But now in your role in marketing ops, it's the organization is going to have to look at how it is that you're measured individually for success, and what the and correlation between email and partnerships, or emails and this. And it'll be very interesting. Be very interested to hear how that kind of shakes out over the next few months. So there was a question from Justin asking about soft skill areas for people who are interested in working as a marketing professional in nonprofits. And that's a great question. It's come up on the other panels that we've done. And so I'm going to actually go back to Sheridan for this one, because I'm curious. She's kind of been in different organizations, and has as someone who's in a leadership role within a nonprofit, I'd be interested to know some of the soft skill growth areas, some of this, and soft skills that a candidate should, that a strong candidate should have, things that, in addition to the ability, like you said, like people kind of landed on you because you knew how to code. That's a hard skill, but you could be a great coder and an awful person to work with, and not mesh at all with the mission and people around you. So I'd be interested to know what those soft skills are that are complementary, or that you should have in addition to having whatever those hard skills are.
Sure. So really, within World Food Program USA, I would say that every employee there and all of my colleagues are really, really passionate about the mission. And so that, makes it easy for me because we're all like-minded. And we all know that every day we are, regardless of what we're doing. So even if it's someone who is paying invoices or sending out press releases, we know that at the end of the day, we're helping fundraise for the World Food Program so they could deliver meals to people across the world. So I think, ensuring that your values line up with the values of the organization is definitely, I think, the most important soft skill if you're looking at nonprofit work. And then I think also there's a lot of competing priorities. I work very closely with our marketing communications team, and they're, tasked with building our brand. And of course, sometimes building brand doesn't exactly line up with bringing in revenue or bringing in some, donations. So trying, I think, to be able to compromise on competing priorities and understand, okay, well, we're here for the same reason. So if, your email for fundraising needs to go out this time, maybe we could segment the list in a different way. So being very, very, I think, cooperative and collaborative is also really helpful. And again, going back to not having very many resources, I mean, just thinking out of the box and being innovative. I'm fortunate that my, team and my boss has been very open to ideas and different ways of thinking. And I think that's definitely needed just because, like I said, we don't have a lot of resources. We don't have a lot of staff or, monetary resources. So being able to think of new ideas and bringing that into WFP USA has been really, really great.
That's awesome. That's that's soft skills tend to be overlooked sometimes when people think, oh, I meet the qualifications, and then they can't get a second interview, or they're like, well, I don't understand why it is. And it's because they gave off a certain vibe that suggested they may not be a good fit. And and so that's something that is, I think, soft skills are, and there's plenty of books and there's classes on how to improve your soft skills. And I think it's a underappreciated and undervalued skill to have that can sometimes help you. You may not fit fully like the hard skills, but if your soft skills are there, then it suggests that you can at least learn them and become an upskill. Sometimes those can really help you out above and beyond your individual hard skills. Michelle, I'm interested kind of to know your take on this as well around soft skills. You're in a leadership role with a nonprofit, and so if there's anything that you would like to add to what Sheridan said.
Yeah, I agree with what Sheridan said. I also think in the realm or vein of innovation, having an interest in experimentation, trying new things, not being bogged down by failure. It's really hard to get through sometimes, but that building that kind of optimism, especially when you're working and things aren't kind of working out the way you designed it to, that's really important, especially when you run into competing priorities. As Sheridan said, a lot of I'm in the development team, and we are working with the communications team as well, and we do have to figure out our competing priorities, where they're definitely more interested in brand and they want to get the information out to their audiences, and we're trying to renew our members, for example. Another soft skill I thought too was having a love of problem solving. Maybe that's also in that kind of a vein as well. Project planning, being able to be very detail oriented, organized, that's really helpful, especially in marketing, where you're trying to segment your different audiences and kind of stay on top of all those different audiences and people.
That's awesome. So there we have a couple questions that came in. There was one from Denise, and I'm going to kind of her question is around making the case of leadership for investing in marketing ops in your org. And so I want to spread the love a little bit and kind of pitch that question to Mara. Mara's role is marketing ops in the realm of, and so I'm interested to know, in addition to what Denise said around how you position marketing automation, marketing ops to leadership as a not just a cost center, as one that is driving innovation, is driving visibility. How do you position that part of the organization to leadership for as being a good place for investment and things like that?
Yeah, I think I'm going to answer that more along the lines of trying to fight to keep it. We kind of went through that. Be the Match was looking into whether or not Pardot was a good investment. So we really had to make a case to keep it. We did a lot of evaluation about what kind of journeys we were doing, what kind of leads we were bringing in, what kind of opportunities we were creating with the sales team, and where we were pre-Pardot. So we've had Pardot about 3 years now. So we didn't have this happened about a year and a half ago. So we didn't have a whole lot of data to go off of yet. And then just like the members of the team and how many people we were actually paying, to create these results. So they even looked at taking Pardot away and moving us into Marketing Cloud. And like for one person that was handling Pardot, we needed like 5 people to run Marketing Cloud. So we really based our case on that. And for our team anyway, leadership was very involved in the whole process. And so we didn't really need to make a case for it. So I guess I might not be the best to answer this question, but we had it more along the lines of just proving why we should keep it than get
Okay.
it.
No, that makes sense. And I guess, if does anyone else have any other takes? Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because we're also a very small nonprofit with 35 staff members. We don't have a marketing arm pretty much at all. We do have a communications director and team, but they are again focused on our Spur News monthly newsletter, really helping our policy directors publish their papers and get the information out there and the research out there. So in terms of marketing, our organization in the past has gone to consulting for help, but it's been a bit of piecemeal. And so far we haven't made the case to bring anybody on board with a particular marketing background. So I would say yes, it's kind of difficult. And my experience with this nonprofit is that they've been more comfortable looking to consultants to help them in very specific areas rather than
Oh, that's
bringing on
interesting.
a staff member or committing to bringing on a staff member.
That's interesting for a nonprofit, because sometimes, I mean, as I'm sure as really everyone knows, is that oftentimes bringing in a consultant can be an expensive endeavor, depending on the scope and things like that. So it's a curious mindset and maybe it speaks to the lack of belief in like the need for some like any kind of permanent solution. They see them as kind of a surgical kind of just resource or something that's available if you've got like a retainer. The retainer feels like it's a more controllable expense without feeling like you're investing in a headcount and an FTE, because there's other things that obviously come with that. So I totally get that. I totally understand that that perspective, because especially if you're a small team and you've got limited resources, a consultant actually would make a lot of sense, because they may have a higher hourly rate, but at the end of the day, they're less expensive than headcount.
Yeah, and some of these efforts to get a consultant on board has been mostly project based. Like, take a look at our marketing or the emails that we're sending out, and do you think we're emailing people too much or too little? Or another project, which is, hey, we want to boost membership. Let's go through a workshop, one day a workshop exercise where we are mapping out the member donor experience, for example. So it's become project by project, trying to kind of inject funding and resources in particular areas of our organization.
That makes sense. There was another question from Michael asking about whether marketing ops is relatively self-contained. Outside of nonprofits, there's a need to work closely with sales and customer success. And that's very true, is that marketing ops tends to have a very hand-in-glove kind of relationship with sales, and they don't tend to be like, there isn't a lot of daylight there. Typically, the more daylight you have in that kind of organization, the more problems there tend to be, because of how related that they need to be. So I'd be interested to hear. Let's see here. I'm going to open it up because I think really everyone could have a take. So, is there anyone in particular you want to raise hand raiser, or I'll just pick on somebody? Nobody? Okay, cool. I'm going to throw this to Kirsten. I'm curious to hear, in your experience working with nonprofits that have marketing ops functions, how you've seen other nonprofits align their marketing ops teams with other teams. Is there a degree of independence, or are they related? Are they closely related to like memberships or donate or giving, things like that?
Yeah, I think the scenario I've seen most often is that they're closely related to fundraising, just because that's so much a part of what nonprofit communication is all about. And I'll also say, like, depending on the size of the organization, I think people don't often have like marketing titles, or let alone marketing ops, even in larger organizations. I think that's the truth sometimes, where, several of my larger clients have, maybe like channel leads or something like that, who are kind of like outside of the traditional nonprofit structure, but aren't exactly marketing ops either. So it's an interesting kind of dynamic where, depending on the individual and the teams, it's kind of a different scenario all the time. But I mean, I think the thing that I found really is just that getting a good sense of who influences how people are communicating at the organization is really critical, right? So if there's a marketing team, great, they're probably having some sort of editorial calendar or something that brings all of that together. But a lot of times there's going to be a variety of different people trying to email your list for a variety of reasons. And you have to have some decision making in there. And I think nonprofit culture can often be like very collaborative and focused on consensus building and trying to get everyone's perspective all of the time and let people be heard. But that can be kind of tricky sometimes when you have to just like make a judgment call about like, what are we going to do for this campaign? So I think kind of going back to the soft skills concept as well, just the need to be a really good listener and understand kind of how decision making happens at an organization is really important.
I'll add on to that one actually. We actually have a traditional MQL SQL process with our sales team that we set up with them, and we qualify them after certain points, and they meet certain criteria, and then we pass them on to the sales team, and then they become qualified in our book when they get opportunities with them. And then we also review all of our journeys and our email campaigns with our sales team. And if we have any that are coming out that look like a personal email from the sales team, we also make sure that they review it and have their input on it. And Kristen, like you said, yeah, sometimes too many cooks in the kitchen. We do experience that too. We also have account managers on another vertical that review what's going out just so they're aware. So if people reply to an email, they know what they're talking about and that these emails have gone out. So if they phone call them and mention something that we emailed them, they're at least aware of it and aren't just blindsided by some kind of like, not that we send promotions, but promotions out or something along those lines. So we really try to get our team involved.
So that makes total sense. Thank you for that. So one thing I want to kind of, we're kind of getting close to the end, and I just want to and I want to come back to the skills side of this. And so we've talked a bit about soft skills and how important they are, and I want to kind of look at now the opposite side of this, the hard skills, the tactical skills. If you're somebody who's wanting to kind of you've decided like, okay, I really am interested in let's say for the sake of it, because this is a Pardot group, I want to learn Pardot, I want to learn Sales Cloud. And you see, like, as the more you kind of spend with it, the more you start seeing NPSP, you start seeing EDA, you start seeing all these, you start seeing .org, everything, like your eyes start getting wide with all the different technologies that can exist, whether it's Razor's Edge or anything any other of those tools. I'd be interested to know when someone is thinking about that, what are some of the tactical skills that would make someone shine, knowing that there's being with a nonprofit, oftentimes your job title is kind of isn't really like it's not a hard and fast job title. You will, like, there are things that you'll do that may drift outside of what your title says or what your job description says. Any kind of like software maybe that people who are interested in kind of pursuing that kind of pathway, whether is it coding, is it knowing at the very least like MailChimp and Constant Contact, HubSpot. What are some of the kind of hard skills that would make someone a valuable asset to a nonprofit's marketing organization, whether they're called marketing or called something else? So I will actually start this. Let's start with, I've got a couple people want to ask this, and then we'll close out. I'm going to start actually with Jacqueline, interestingly enough. I'm curious to know from your experience of working with nonprofits that have come to you as a consultant, and some of the, I don't know if you want to call them kind of opportunity areas for people that say, oh, if they knew this, they would be much better off, or they would have a much stronger foundational knowledge in this or that. Anything that you've noticed that like trend-wise, like, oh, across the board, if everyone just at the very least had a sense of HTML and CSS, they'd be light years ahead.
Yeah, this is a really good question. So I think that where we're seeing platforms go in the Salesforce ecosystem, especially with Pardot, really falls into attribution and reporting. And, Mara talked about this earlier with having to make the case for keeping Pardot. I think you will be a class above the rest if you can really dig into B2B B2B marketing analytics. You can take a look at Pardot Einstein features. You can understand how Salesforce reporting works, how campaign influence works. If you can dig into those features and really be able to understand which of your engagement studio programs, your emails, your newsletters, all of that is really driving, whether that's donations or lead generation, and be able to tell that to someone on your executive team or your board, you will be set for life. I think that skill is going to be key moving forward with any type of marketing automation platform.
That's exactly it. I mean, that's key. And B2B can sometimes be a very overwhelming tool. And I think that sometimes even just peeling it back like a layer just below that is just familiarity with the concept of attribution, of understanding how the kind of things, the kind of tools that are out there. And even just having a kind of conversational knowledge of BDBMA, conversational knowledge of reporting in Salesforce. I think because there's such a prevalence of Salesforce within nonprofits, I know that there's others out there, but I think being able to say, yes, I'm familiar with Salesforce. I may not be an admin, but I'm on Trailhead and I'm doing this, and you kind of immediately become kind of a technical resource. Maybe not fully, but like you definitely become somebody who you can say, okay, I know exactly where you would fit into this. You would be a great person to add to this team. So I'm going to kind of also ask that question to Sheridan around technical skills. You obviously were you had the coding background, and that kind of led to other opportunities and things like that. So I'm interested from a hard skill technology skills perspective. Are there any specific technology skills, softwares, things like that that people who are interested in pursuing this as like a career path should focus on?
I would agree with Jacqueline that really getting a handle on metrics and reporting and attribution is way more important, I think, than learning how to code. One of my staff members, she did not know how to code before joining. She just worked out of the WYSIWYG, and she was able to pick it up really quickly. But what we're really trying to do and working with Kirsten and her team is really, I think, digging into BBMA and trying to get an Einstein analytics on trying to see where we can take our email to in terms of creating more tailored content, getting increasing conversions, et cetera. And then I guess if you want to talk about software, we have, folks on our staff that have some graphic design skills. It's just really helpful to just be able to edit a photo really quickly if we're putting it in a, direct mail piece or an email piece. So just knowing some basic Photoshop is just hugely helpful. If there's anything that we need to do that's outside of just quick photo editing, we'll definitely contract that out. But it's that's been really, really helpful. And I guess trying to think of any other, I don't think that we use any other real software, at least like in my role, except for those two, for Photoshop and maybe learning some code as well as knowing how to, navigate Salesforce essentially. So we also have a team that kind of works with everybody in the organization on reporting, but you should, I think, definitely know the basics of Salesforce. And I'm really, really glad that there are so many different trailheads that you can do. And, this is fairly new to our organization, Salesforce. We had a little bit of a link before we switched to Pardot and Springboard to help manage and NPSP to help manage our donations and everything. But no one really knew how to enter a contact correctly. So I think the trailheads have been really helpful to get everybody up to speed.
Yeah, I think you make a great point that the amount of resources that Salesforce has available, I would think that especially if you're talking to somebody who's interested in digital marketing, and they've that'll kind of give you a sense of how much homework they've done, how interested, how aware are they of the Salesforce platform. Ask them for their Trailhead.me account just to get a sense of certs, if they have any, what their trailhead numbers are, because that will often tell a story itself. Even if they don't have a lot, they're at least there, and they're aware of it, and they're trying to grow.
And it's part of our onboarding process too, right? So if you join, our development team, it's kind of like, here's the set of trailheads that you should do within your first week.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you are going to be very, very lost, because everything that we operate for development, and even our operations team now at this point, our finance and operations team, they've added stuff to our Salesforce so they can manage things too. Is, you really need to, I think, get the basics of Salesforce down.
Yeah.
I would agree as well. NPSP, I learned about Salesforce, and I only know NPSP. I really don't know what the other Salesforce versions look like, actually. So if you do, and it's really structured, I would say, differently, really based around households and major donor kind of perspective. So it's a huge shift in possibly what a nonprofit Salesforce org looks like.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. There's so many flavors of Sales Cloud, and NPSP is one of the big ones, because it's obviously, and that's got a whole group of people dedicated to managing it, and NPSP tends to be kind of the gold standard when a nonprofit is looking to get off of their current CRM and into something more functional. All right, well, we're just at time, and I don't want to take any more time from anybody else. I want to thank all the panelists for participating, and attendees who were able to take part, and thank you everybody for your questions. I feel like this was a great conversation. There was a lot of really great advice that was shared, and this recording will be available on YouTube in a couple days, and I'll also be sending that link out to those who registered. So yeah, that's it here. Thanks everybody. Have a good rest of your week and a great weekend today. If you're in the US, happy and safe 4th of July weekend. Thank you, everybody.